My name's Stephanie. I've been married to Mark for 17 years. We have one son, Ethan, who just turned 14. I work part-time at the local library, mostly shelving and running kids' story hour. We live in a nice neighborhood just outside Pittsburgh. We mow our lawn, bring store-bought potato salad to cookouts, and wave to the same 6 people every Saturday when we walk the dog. Nothing about my life would have suggested this was coming. Not to anyone watching from the outside. Not even to me. I met Greg at a Little League game 2 years ago. Our sons, Ethan and Liam, ended up on the same team. Same age, same school, different classes. I'd seen Greg around before, at PTA events or in the pickup line, but I never looked at him twice. He was a dad, another suburban fixture. He lost his wife 4 years ago. Cancer, someone told me. I remember thinking how young he looked to be a widower. Early 40s, strong hands, always in clean jeans and a ball cap. He had that calm, easy way about him, like someone who had learned to live with loss but hadn't let it ruin him. We started talking one afternoon while the kids were warming up. Mark was out of town for work, and I'd come alone. I had a thermos of coffee, and Greg asked if I had an extra cup. I laughed and said, "This is my survival dose," and offered him a sip instead. He smiled, real and warm, and sat down beside me on the metal bleachers. That was it. Nothing wild, just two parents chatting while their kids ran drills in the dust. But I remember how easy it was. The way he asked questions, the way he listened. I told him about my job at the library, and he didn't nod politely like most people do. He asked what I liked to read. He asked what I was writing. No one had asked me that in years. At home, things with Mark were fine. Always just fine. We weren't fighting. We weren't close. We were just managing. Bills, meals, chores. We hadn't had sex in 6 months, and I'm not even sure either of us noticed. He was always tired, always in motion. Even when he sat down, his mind was somewhere else. I don't blame him. That's just how things got over time. That quiet, slow erosion. We became polite, functional. So that first conversation with Greg caught me off guard. It made me realize how much I missed being talked to. Not at, not through, but to. Like I mattered. The next few weeks, I found myself looking for him. At the games. At school events. I wasn't flirting. Not yet. I was just drawn to him in that magnetic, low-key way you only feel when your life has gone still and someone walks in with energy you forgot existed. The moment things changed, really changed, was on a Tuesday. Practice ran late, and it got colder than expected. I hadn't brought a jacket. I was sitting on the bench, arms wrapped around myself, when Greg walked over and offered me his hoodie. I shook my head. "You'll freeze." He smiled and said, "I've been colder." I took it, slipped it on. It smelled like detergent and something warm underneath it. Masculine but not sharp. Familiar in a strange way, like something I'd forgotten I used to want. When he sat next to me, our shoulders touched. Just barely. But he didn't move away. And neither did I. He turned toward me and said, "You always look like you're somewhere else." That line stuck with me. He wasn't wrong. I'd been somewhere else for a long time. I just didn't know someone would follow me there. The next time I saw Greg, I felt it. That tension, that shift in awareness. It wasn't sexual. Not exactly. It was sharper than that. Quieter. Like something unspoken had passed between us, and now every word we said was carrying extra weight. We were at another practice, sitting in folding chairs with travel mugs and forced small talk with other parents. But I kept glancing his way. And every time I did, he was already looking at me. Not in a hungry, aggressive way. Just noticing. I hadn't been noticed in a long time. After practice, he caught up to me in the parking lot. He said Liam left his water bottle at our house after their last play date. I told him I hadn't seen it, but I'd check. He said, "No rush. I know where to find you," and smiled. That night, he messaged me, not on social media, on actual text. I forgot that I'd given him my number months ago when the boys were coordinating some group project. I never deleted the thread. Greg. Turns out the bottle was in my car the whole time. You're off the hook. I smiled. Too much. Me. Glad to clear my name. Hope Liam forgives me. Greg. Liam does. Me? Jury's still out. That was it. Nothing scandalous. Nothing that would make anyone raise an eyebrow. But something in me stirred. The next day, he sent a photo. An old book he found in his attic with a handwritten dedication. Thought you'd appreciate this. You're the librarian, after all. I told myself it was sweet, that it meant nothing, that it was nice to feel connected to someone who remembered small things about me. But a week later, we were texting every day. It crept in slowly, under the radar. I'd be making dinner and see his name light up. I'd be folding laundry while Mark watched the news, and my phone would buzz with a comment about something silly Ethan or Liam said at school, or a music recommendation, or a memory from childhood that had no reason to matter except that he decided to share it with me. And then, one night, after I hadn't replied for hours because we were at Mark's cousin's house for dinner, he messaged, "Missed hearing from you today. Is it weird that I notice now?" That made something shift in my chest. I should have stopped, right then. That was the first real moment I knew this wasn't just casual. But instead, I answered honestly, "It's not weird. I noticed it too." From there, things deepened quickly. He told me about his wife, how she died, the way the chemo changed her, the guilt he still carried for sometimes hoping it would end, just so she could rest, how Liam doesn't remember her laugh anymore. I sat on the bathroom floor with the lights off, reading his words like scripture, crying for someone I'd never met, for a man who wasn't mine. And then I told him something I hadn't told anyone, that I'd stopped writing. I used to write short fiction. Nothing big, just little stories I never showed anyone. But I hadn't touched a word in nearly 5 years. He asked why. I told him I stopped believing I had anything to say, that no one was listening anyway. He replied, "I'm listening." God help me, I believed him. The first time we saw each other after that string of messages, it was at a weekend tournament. Our boys were playing early, and Mark stayed home to fix something in the garage. Greg and I stood side by side, our chairs just barely touching, not even looking at each other most of the time. But I felt the air between us tighten with every minute. He handed me a cup of coffee. Our fingers brushed. I didn't flinch. Later that night, he texted, "You looked beautiful this morning." I stared at those words. I must have read them 20 times. No one had called me beautiful in, I don't even know how long. Not in a way that felt real. Not in a way that landed. I didn't write back for a few minutes. I was standing in my kitchen, lights off, heart racing like I was 16 again. But I wasn't a teenager. I was a mother, a wife, a woman who knew exactly where this was headed. And still, I typed, "You make me feel like I exist again." It happened on a Sunday, the kind of Sunday that feels like a reset. Quiet, warm air, laundry running in the background, the sound of a lawnmower somewhere on the street. Mark was in the garage fixing a cabinet drawer. Ethan was over at Liam's finishing a school project. Greg texted me around 10 a.m. "Want to help me grab supplies for the baseball fundraiser?" I could use a second opinion. I didn't think about it too long. I told Mark I was running out to Target for a few things. He barely looked up from his tools. I met Greg in the parking lot of a strip mall on the edge of town. He had a list, a pen in his hand, and a smile that almost made me forget why I shouldn't be there. We walked through aisles like two normal people doing something totally unremarkable. Chips, coolers, Gatorade, plastic cutlery. But the space between our arms felt electric, charged. His hand brushed mine once, and neither of us apologized. When we reached for the same box of napkins and our fingers tangled for a second too long, he didn't look away. "You hungry?" he asked when we finished loading the trunk. I nodded. A little. He didn't ask where I wanted to go, he just said, "Follow me." We ended up at a diner 5 minutes away. Quiet, cheap, vinyl booths and sun-bleached menus. We didn't talk about the kids, not once. We talked about music, about dreams we gave up too soon, about people we used to be. I told him things I hadn't said out loud in years, like how I always imagined writing something real one day, maybe even a novel. He said he used to take photos before life swallowed that part of him whole. "Now I just take pictures of receipts for taxes," he joked. When we got back to his car, he opened the trunk and handed me one of the bags. Too light to need carrying, but he gave it to me anyway. And I don't know what it was. The way he looked at me, or how long it had been since someone looked at me like that. But I stopped. Just stopped. He said my name, Software. And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't aggressive. It was slow, like a question being asked. I answered. I kissed him back. I don't remember walking into his house. I don't remember the drive. But I remember standing in his entryway, the light coming through the window behind me, the silence around us so heavy it felt sacred. He asked me if I wanted to stop. He meant it. I could have walked out, but I didn't. His bedroom was simple, clean, too clean almost, like it hadn't been lived in much since his wife died. We didn't rip clothes off. We didn't rush. We moved like people who'd been starving and finally sat down to eat slowly, deliberately. His hands were careful. Mine were shaking. I wasn't nervous. I was overwhelmed. And the worst part wasn't that I cheated on my husband. The worst part was that it didn't feel wrong. It felt inevitable. After we lay there, both quiet. He didn't ask what it meant. I didn't make promises. I got dressed slowly, watching him watch me. He brushed my hair back before I left and said, "You don't have to disappear." But I did. I had to. I had a family, a life, a husband who trusted me enough not to ask where I'd been. When I walked through the front door, Mark was still in the garage. Ethan was on the couch watching TV. "Hey, Mom," he said without turning his head. "Hey, bud," I answered like nothing had changed. But everything had. That night, I sat next to my husband on the couch while he flipped through channels, and I felt like a stranger in my own body. He reached for my hand once, absently, like a reflex. I let him take it. And I told myself this would be the last time. But deep down, I already knew. It wouldn't be. I don't know how long we kept it going. Time gets slippery when you're living two lives. Days blend together. You stop noticing what week it is. You just start counting time in stolen hours and text messages you read with your phone tilted away from anyone who might glance. Greg and I saw each other when we could. Sometimes in his house, sometimes at his work office on weekends when no one was there. Once in a parking lot in the back seat of my car in broad daylight. I told myself it was the last time every time. But the truth was, I couldn't stop. I didn't want to. It wasn't just the sex. I mean, yes, there was hunger, the kind that makes you remember your body can still feel like fire. But more than that, it was the space he created when he looked at me. He saw me, not as someone's mom or someone's wife, just me, my thoughts, my past, my mess. And I let him in, every time, a little more. At home, I started pulling away from Mark. Not on purpose, not out of cruelty. I just stopped trying. I stopped reaching for him in bed, stopped offering details about my day. We moved around each other like polite roommates. I think he noticed, but he didn't ask. Maybe he didn't want to know the answer. Ethan noticed, though. Kids are always watching, always listening. He'd ask small things. You okay, Mom? Or, you seem tired lately. And I'd smile, say I was fine, ruffle his hair like nothing was wrong. But he knew, even if he didn't know what he knew. One night, after dinner, I caught Greg looking at me across the table at a neighborhood gathering. We were seated far apart, with spouses and friends and PTA moms all between us, but his eyes found mine. He tilted his head, smiled just a little, and I felt this pull, like gravity, but warmer, like home. That's when it hit me how insane this had become. We were sitting 10 feet from our kids, our spouses, our shared friends, everyone laughing over pasta salad and red Solo cups. And the whole time, he and I were living this invisible story right underneath all of it. I started sweating. Later that night, after Mark had gone to bed, I sat outside alone. The air was thick and humid, and I couldn't breathe. I messaged Greg, "This has to stop." He didn't reply right away. When he did, he didn't argue. I know. But then he added, "I'm not sorry it happened." Neither was I. That was the worst part. We tried to slow down. We really did. No more sleepovers, no more long talks. But we still texted. Still found reasons to be at the same events. Still smiled too long when we passed each other in the school hallway. And then came the night that cracked everything open. It was a Friday. Another backyard party, this time at our house. The boys had a half day, the parents were grilling, and Mark was drinking beers with Greg at the side of the yard. Watching them, my husband and my lover laughing like friends, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. Real, stomach-churning shame. I went inside to grab more cups and caught my reflection in the kitchen window. My mouth was tight. My eyes were too bright. And I looked tired in a way makeup couldn't fix. When I came back out, Ethan was standing alone, staring at Greg. Not talking, just watching. And Greg looked uncomfortable. Like he'd just been caught doing something. My heart dropped. That night, after everyone left, I asked Ethan if he was okay. He shrugged. "You're different lately." I laughed it off. "I've just been busy." But he didn't smile. He just said, "You think I don't notice stuff, but I do." And then he walked upstairs. I sat at the bottom of the stairs for a long time, listening to the sounds of the house settling. The fridge, the creak in the hallway, the bedroom door closing. And I thought, we're closer to the edge than I ever knew. He wasn't supposed to see it. It was a careless mistake, the kind you don't realize is dangerous until it's far too late. I left my phone on the kitchen counter while I folded laundry. Just 10 minutes, maybe less. Mark was outside mowing the lawn. The dryer buzzed. I didn't even hear the notification. But Ethan did. Later, I pieced it together. He was looking for a charger. The message lit up on my lock screen, and curiosity, or maybe intuition, made him swipe. Greg's name, a heart emoji. Words no child should ever read from their mother's phone. When I came back into the room, Ethan was sitting at the table, my phone in his hand, pale and quiet in a way that instantly made my stomach drop. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. He didn't answer. I took a step closer. That's when I saw it. The phone screen. Open. Unlocked. The message from Greg still there. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. "Ethan." He looked up at me then, and I'll never forget the way his eyes looked. Not angry. Not crying. Just hollow. Disappointed in a way only a child can be when they realize their parent isn't who they thought they were. "How long?" he asked. I couldn't speak. He stood up slowly. "So, all those times you said you were at the store or with a friend?" I stepped toward him. "Ethan, it's not—" He shook his head. "Don't lie again. Please, I already know." There's nothing in the world that prepares you for your child saying that. I reached for his arm. He pulled away. "I thought Dad was the one who didn't pay attention," he said, his voice low, shaking. "But you're the one hiding." Then he walked past me, up the stairs, and slammed his door. I stood in the kitchen, staring at nothing, the weight of it pressing down on me until I had to sit. I don't know how long I stayed there. Minutes. Hours. I couldn't move. Couldn't cry. Couldn't think. Mark came inside later, sweaty and tired from mowing, and asked if everything was okay. I opened my mouth, closed it, shook my head. I wanted to tell him. I really did. But something in me locked up. I couldn't face it. Not yet. He sat down across from me. "You're pale," he said. "You sick or something?" I shook my head again. He studied me for a moment. "You sure you're okay?" I finally forced myself to speak. "Just a long day." He nodded, accepted it, got up to shower. That night, I lay in bed next to him, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. I kept waiting to hear Ethan's door open, for him to come in, say something, cry, yell, anything. But he didn't. He stayed in his room, silent. The next morning, Mark was drinking coffee when I came downstairs. Ethan wasn't at the table. "Where's Ethan?" I asked. "He left early, said he was meeting Liam at the field." I nodded, but my stomach turned. And then Mark looked at me. Really looked. His eyes tired, confused, quiet. "Did something happen?" he asked. My body went still. "What do you mean?" He set his mug down. "I don't know. Just feels like something's wrong." I opened my mouth, closed it again, and then I said it. He saw something on my phone. Something he shouldn't have. Mark's jaw tensed. "What kind of something?" I felt my hands go cold. "I've been seeing someone." Silence. No shock. No yelling. Just silence. He nodded once. "Who?" "Greg." That was when the color drained from his face. "Our Greg?" "Our son's friend's dad," I corrected. "Yes." He stood up, not fast. Just stood, like the air had become too heavy to sit in. And then, quieter than I expected, he said, "I trusted you." I looked at him. The man who built our home, paid every bill, showed up for every birthday and every broken appliance. The man who never asked for more than what I said I could give. "I know," I whispered. And then I said the truest thing I'd said in weeks. I don't think I know who I am anymore. He nodded again and walked away. The divorce wasn't loud. No screaming, no name-calling, just paperwork and polite logistics. Who would stay in the house? Him. Where Ethan would spend the school week, split evenly. And how we'd tell our families without making it worse than it already was. Mark didn't ask for anything except the truth. I gave him what I could. The rest he already knew. Greg and I stopped talking the same week it all came out. I didn't ask him to vanish. He just did. No message. No explanation. No, I'm sorry, or take care of yourself. And maybe that was for the best. He and Liam moved to a different neighborhood a few months later. Not far, just far enough to change schools. But baseball didn't change. It never does in towns like ours. So yes, I still see him. At games, at tournaments, at the local sports shop on Saturdays when all the parents are buying new cleats or custom water bottles. I see him standing at the far edge of the bleachers, sunglasses on, pretending not to glance my way. I pretend too. Ethan doesn't sit next to me at games anymore. He sits with Mark, if Mark's there. If not, he sits with the team. He doesn't yell at me, doesn't act out. He just stays polite, distant, careful. That hurts more than anything. One night, I tried to explain it. Not the details, but enough. We were driving home from practice. He sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, staring out the window. I asked if he wanted to talk. He shrugged, said, "I'm fine." But he wasn't. I could feel it. So I told him something true. I made a mistake, Ethan. A big one. And I'll probably be sorry about it for the rest of my life. He didn't speak, just nodded. That was the only acknowledgement I got. I think about Mark a lot now, in the quiet parts of the day, in the way the laundry piles up, in the sound of the house when it's only me inside it. He didn't deserve what I did to him. That's not some dramatic confession. It's just a fact. He wasn't perfect. He could be distant and closed off and tired and forgetful. But he was loyal, steady, honest. And I blew a hole through all of that because I wanted to feel something more than invisible. Some nights, I lie in bed and imagine what would have happened if I hadn't replied to Greg's message. If I'd seen his name and chosen silence. If I'd just smiled politely at practices and gone home to my husband, to the quiet life we built. Would I be happier? I don't know. Because here's the other truth no one wants to say out loud. I love the way Greg looked at me. And I loved the way I felt when I was with him. Seen, desired, awake. But I don't know if I loved him. Not really. He was the crack in the surface, the entry point, the mirror I didn't know I needed. But love? Love stays when the fantasy dies. Love sits across from you when the lights are too bright and says, "I'm still here." Greg didn't stay. Mark didn't either. And I don't blame him. What's left is this version of me that I don't quite recognize yet. Someone quieter, lonelier, more honest than she used to be. Someone who goes to baseball games alone now, sits near the back, claps when her son does well, and smiles for the parents who don't know what she did. Sometimes I catch Greg watching me. Sometimes I don't. It doesn't matter anymore. We're ghosts to each other now. Present but weightless. And every now and then, when I paint, yes, I start it again. I think about all the ways people disappear from their lives without anyone noticing. And all the ways we beg someone, anyone, to pull us back before it's too late. No one pulled me back. And I didn't ask them to.